All right, so that part of things is kind of shaping up now. Now we can carve a bit of a separation between the wings and the rest of the body. So the wings will come to a point when viewed from the top, and they'll be centered. And then this cut can angle up a bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly parallel with the bottom of the tail. So this will be the bottom of the wing. So we don't need to make this cut go all the way around the wing, because we'll do some other methods to separate the wing from the body up there. We don't actually need that stop cut to continue all the way around. So draw in where we'll have that stop cut on this side. Stop cut or V cut. And now we'll start to make that cut. When I'm slicing up from the tail here, I'm not cutting straight. I'm not cutting flat with the top of the tail. I'm cutting at an angle, just to kind of shape the body and the tail as we make this cut. And then we want this stop cut to kind of taper off and get real narrow as it reaches its end up here. And we can do the same on the other side, make that angled stop cut, meet that cut from the top. And there's still saw marks under the bottom of the tail, so we can take those off just by slicing them off. Now I'm just removing the saw marks at the very end of the tail. Alright, so as you can see, I kind of shaped the tail as I was making this stop cut. I was shaping the tail so that it comes to a bit of a point right here in the center. The wings can kind of do the same thing. We're going to add a few more cuts to the wings. We're going to add some separations between some of the feathers and the wings. So this doesn't really need to come to a perfect point here. But the tail we will leave pretty simple, even more simple than the wings. The bird is still looking pretty blocky. So what we can do now is take some wood off both sides. We want to be able to see the pumpkin from the top a bit more. It's the crow is almost blocking the pumpkin entirely when you look at it from the top. So let's take some wood from the belly here. Let's take some wood off there. Some nice big bold cuts. When we're taking wood off of here, we start to cut wood off from the sides. And of course, cutting wood off from the sides means that we'll be able to see more of the pumpkin from the top, which also means, of course, that we will be narrowing the crow overall. Now we're slicing up to take off the corner we just created. Now we want this to curve down, the sides of the bird to curve down more into the pumpkin, so we can deepen this V cut. And now we can make those same adjustments on the other side. It's looking a lot more reasonable. It's much more crow-shaped now, and you can see the pumpkin from the top. As we exposed more of the pumpkin, we can see there are some additional kind of bumps and lumps and corners in the pumpkin that we can take off. Never too late to shape any part of the carving. even after he painted, technically. I've recarved a few carvings years after I painted them, carved through the paint. You can do that, it's okay. It's actually kind of interesting. Depending on the type of finish you use, I used linseed oil for some of those carvings, and it's kind of surprising how deep linseed oil penetrates. Not all the way through the wood, depending on how, like if you soak it in linseed oil, maybe it would penetrate all the way through, but if you apply linseed oil to a carving, a basswood carving at least, it'll soak down, I would say, at least an eighth of an inch, or at least 2 or 3 millimeters. A bit deeper than the paint penetrates. This shape is looking a little weird to me. If you notice this, there's this nice separation between the planes, the cuts that we created, and it's kind of curving down a little bit. So I want it to be a bit more straight. So I'll just adjust that facet a bit with the edge of my knife so that it doesn't curve like that. Now things are really shaping up quite a bit. So now we can look back once again at the beak, and we can take off that wood that we planned and sketched out a while ago. From the top we can see that the whole beak just blends right into the face in almost a straight cut. So here's where we can start slicing wood from the sides of the face. We don't want to narrow the very end of the beak, but we do want to narrow the base of the beak quite a bit. We do want the beak to be, we want it to be taller than it is wide. Just rolling off some wood chips right at the base of the beak. And then I'm just working my way towards the tip ever so carefully, just to transition those cuts nicely. For the actual detailing of the beak, of course the beak is made of 2 parts, the top and the bottom, and they're very much divided in the center, of course. But we don't actually have to make that, we don't have to carve in that separation. Because this is such a small piece, we can simulate that look by taking advantage of the line that's formed between this plane, this slice here, and the one right under it. So this line that's formed here, we can take advantage of that, and actually we can cause that to form the separation between the top and bottom part of the beak. Right now we see that that line is very, very low, and for a crow we want that line to be about in the center of the beak. So we can work that line up by taking off wood at an angle towards the bottom of the beak. Now that line moved up a bit. We can move it up just a little more. We can do the same on the other side. I think we can take off a little bit more wood on the bottom of the beak. And a little bit off the top. And now I'm working on kind of refining the point of the beak. On this side there's this nice inwards curve between the wings here and the head, but on the other side there isn't so much of that distinction. As you can see, it's still kind of convex here. We want it to be concave, so you can just slice off some more wood here to make it match. Further separating the head from the wings. Now I'm kind of refining the shape of the head just a little bit. And you can refer to the pattern as to the shape of the head. The very bottom of the beak should be flat. It shouldn't come to a point at the bottom. So I'm just kind of taking off a little bit more wood there just to make that happen. Alright. So next up, we can add in some more separations between feathers on the wings. So first I'm going to prepare the area a little bit by taking off the bump that we created here, just smoothing out that bump. Now it's more smooth. And now just kind of free form some separations between feathers. And this cut is parallel to the bottom of the wing here, approximately parallel. And this feather is going to go all the way to that side, all the way to the other side of the wing. Now you can extend this cut up a good distance. Maybe right about there. Clean up the end of that cut. And now we can make another cut parallel to that. So this is simulating the wings folding over one another. So oftentimes when I've noticed in pictures that when birds sit down, they don't have wings that sit perfectly symmetrical like this. A lot of times their wings overlap one another. And that's what we're carving right now. Okay, so we have those feathers coming this way. And now we do want to remember that there's another wing with feathers going in the opposite direction. But these feathers are going underneath the other wing's feathers. This area here, I think, is more of the back of the crow rather than wings. Or it's just feathers that aren't sticking out as much. So we can bring that area down a little more. So right now, these feathers are kind of wrapping around, which doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'm kind of working this back so it's a little more flat. So these feathers are a little more flat as they come and almost wrap around to the other side. So now we have some feather action going on. One area that looks very flat right now, I intentionally left it quite flat here between the tops of the wings. If you went ahead and rounded this area up more than I did, that's okay. You can see right now it looks kind of blocky because it's flat up here. The reason I left it like that is because we want this middle part to actually dip down. Because that's kind of where like the shoulder area of the bird is, or kind of an area where, you know, there's one wing on this side, one wing on that side, and the wings are kind of sloping down like that, kind of forming a little cusp where you can see the head dipping down into. So now there's that separation up here. So the next kind of layer of detail that we're going to do on the wings, real simple, we're going to add 2 layers of kind of ruffled feathers. So I'm going to prepare one of the layers right now by making basically 2 V-cuts, one here and one here. And then make another row just like that, just a little ways beneath that row. Like so. And then you can do the same thing on the other side. 2 rows. trying to keep it fairly symmetrical. One there, and then one just a little lower. You'll notice that this separation between these feathers kind of continues up into this area here, unlike on this side where that doesn't happen, but that's okay. That'll work right into our design just fine. Now for the little bit of fun detail. So I've noticed that on crows and a lot of birds that have these kind of layers of feathers, these feathers almost have a scale-like appearance, where there's a bunch of almost scale-like feather endings that you can see. So to simulate that, we're just going to detail these rows of feather endings, basically. We don't have to carve in every feather, but what we're going to do is take out little triangles of wood like that, and we're just going to continue along these V-cuts that we just made, taking out little triangles, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. So just about 3, depending on how exactly long your V-cut there was, maybe 4, but I just made 3 little triangular cuts, and you can see that that really has more of a feathery look. It really looks like there's kind of multiple rows of feathers going on, and to kind of enhance the feather look, we can extend these cuts just a little longer. And now basically what we'll do is do that same thing on this row of cuts, this row, and also this row. All right. So now we have those nice rows of feathers. And I left mine pretty big. You don't have to make yours as big and extreme as these, but I think it adds a little bit of nice detail. Next, what I want to do is start carving in the lines of the pumpkin. I'm not sure if there's a name for that, the kind of grooves that a pumpkin has. And these can be kind of deep. I mean, it can really be a variety. It can be quite shallow if you want. These lines here, these vertical lines that a pumpkin has, or you can go much deeper, and that's just because there's so much variety in pumpkins. So I'm just using the edge of my knife. I'm not using the tip of my knife for most of these cuts, except when it gets to the very top. And then you can take out this kind of pyramid-shaped cut. And so this is the kind of cut that we'll be making all the way around, except there's one more step, which is to round the corners of these V grooves into the V groove. So now we continue that all the way around.